Okay, we're going to go over factoring trinomial squares. First of all, we know that factoring is when you have terms that you're going to multiply together. You factor them out. And then trinomial, tri means 3, so it's 3 terms. And a square, well, we know what a square is. All sides are equal. So the first example we're going to look at is the sum of a plus b squared. Now you don't distribute that square within the 2. You have to multiply a plus b times the sum of a plus b. And when you do that, we're going to use the FOIL method. So FOIL stands for, the F stands for first. So the first term in each set of parentheses is a. A times a is a squared. The next one is outside, so we're going to look at the outermost terms of both of those parentheses. So on the far left, I have a, and on the far right, I have b. So it's a times b, or ab. Now we're going to look at the innermost terms, and that is b times a. Put in alphabetical order, it's a times b. And now our last terms, it's the last terms of each set of parentheses. So we know that b times b is b squared. Now look how I've set them up in columns. I have first in its own column, and then outside and inside in one column, because they're going to, with a trinomial square, they will be identical, and we'll just be adding them together. And then the last is all by itself. So when we add it together, we see that we bring our a squared down. AB plus another AB is 2 ABs, and then bring down the b squared. Recognizing a trinomial square. Well, we can see it in the format of the sum of a plus b squared, or a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. Let's look at some examples. The first one, and you're going to be having to look at knowing what the beginning one looks like, what it would look like factored out, and then factored out, taking it back to its form. So if you have the sum of x plus 2 squared, when you factor it out, and hopefully you'll memorize this quickly so you won't be wasting time factoring because you won't have it on a test. So it's x squared plus 4x plus 4. So if you saw x squared plus 4x plus 4, you're going to be able to turn it back and realize that that would be the sum of x plus 2 squared. Let's look at another one. The sum of 4 plus y squared. If you factored it out and didn't memorize it, you would end up with 16 plus 8y plus y squared. In the opposite format, if you got 16 plus 8y plus y squared, it is the sum of 4 plus y squared. I'll give you a few seconds. Go solve this one. Put it in factor form without having to FOIL it. So it's our first term squared, and our first term is x, so it would be x squared plus twice both of the numbers inside the parentheses multiplied. So 7x doubled or multiplied by 2 is 14x, plus the second term, which is 7 squared. So your answer would be x squared plus 14x plus 49. Now try this one. Okay, you should have come up with the answer, the sum of z plus 3 squared. Now let's look at how to recognize a trinomial square. This will make the future so much easier when we start factoring and you have to determine. And we're going to look at it with a negative number. So this would look like the difference of a minus b squared. Factored out, it would give you a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. Now look at why the negative is in the middle and not at the end. Because if you took the time to FOIL it out, first of all, your outer numbers, a times negative b is negative ab. The inner terms would be negative b times a, which is negative ab. So you'd have two negative ab's. And for the last term, negative b times negative b, well, we know a negative times a negative is a positive, and b times b is b squared. That's why it's a positive b squared. So let's look at some of these. So if we have the difference of x minus 2 squared, it will be x squared minus 4x plus 4. Looking at the other way, if you had x squared minus 4x plus 4, that would be factored to the difference of x minus 2 squared. Let's look at one more. The difference of 4 minus y squared is going to be equal to, as we know from the formula, the first number squared, so 4 squared is 16, minus twice the first term multiplied the second term, so 2 times 4y is 8y with the negative in front, and then the last term is going to be negative y times negative y, which is positive y squared. Same thing, when you see it in that expanded format, 16 minus 8y plus y squared, you should be able to get it back to the difference of 4 minus y squared. Now you're going to try one. Take a minute to solve this on paper. Make sure you use the formula. And the answer you should have gotten is x squared minus 10x plus 25. Let's try it the other way. Write this on paper, your answer, to make sure that you're getting this. Okay, the answer you should have gotten is the difference of z minus 7 squared. Don't worry if you don't get that, because right now we're going to go on and we're going to look at the steps. Now we have to look at how to determine if it's a trinomial square. There are 3 easy steps. You just check the first, the second, the third. If the answer to any of them is no, then it's not a trinomial square. The first step is to look at the first term to see if that's a perfect square. Now we know a perfect square means that the square root of the number or the variable or both combined is a perfect square. Next, look at the last term and see if that is a perfect square. And lastly, it's the middle term is the first term multiplied by the last term and doubled, or multiplied by 2. Note that it can either be positive or negative. Let's look at some. we have x squared plus 4x plus 2. Go down step 1, 2, and 3 and determine if it's a trinomial square. The answer is no. Although the first term, x squared, is a perfect square, the last term, 2, is not a perfect square. Let's try another one. Okay, let's go through it together, see if we arrive at the same answer. So, the square root of 4x squared, well, the square root of 4 is 2. The square root of x squared is x. So that's a perfect square. Let's look at our last term, 1. We know that 1 is a perfect square. So now we have to take the square of 4x squared, which is 2x, double it, or excuse me, multiply it by the last term, which is 1. So it stays 2x, and double it. And is that 4x? Yes. So that is a perfect square. Let's look at our last one. Go through the steps to see if this is a perfect trinomial square. Okay, let's go through it together. So 16x squared, the square root of that, well, the square root of 16 would be 4. The square root of x squared would be x. So 4x is our first term, and that is a perfect square. Our last term is y squared. So now that we know that that is a perfect square, we take our first term times our last term. So 4x, because we take the root of it, times y, so it'd be 4xy, double it, and it could be positive 8xy or negative xy, so yes, it is a perfect square.